So this is the final video for this modeling of vampire bats. I thought the last video might be the final one, but I've gone and improved the rig a bit. So I just want to show you, in the previous video, we had this rig where we could basically animate two of these bones and pretty much get a wing flap. The thing about that is it's not, there's still a lot of like forward kinematics type of animation that you have to keyframe and stuff like that. So I've gone and made a an IK rig so that you can get the same thing using IK on this finger on the middle point, and create a wing flap using that in Blender, and it just works pretty good. Like, it's a nice kind of the way you might if you were grabbing a bird wing and you grabbed and extended the wing out, it might fan out like that. On top of that, I've also added the ability to kind of create a curve or control surfaces along the to kind of make them catch the wind a little bit more, using these outer bones to curve the wing a little bit. So we've got that. I'm going to show how that IK gets set up in a second. On top of that, I added this setup on the tailbone, which has some scale 2 restraints that allow the tail flap. I didn't like the way it was closing up, so this allows it to kind of close up and animate in a way that's a little bit more realistic when you get these flaps that come between, that are kind of in between two stretched out bones. I'll show how that works as well. And then I've gone and created some controls on the feet that allow you to kind of curl the toes using two bones instead of having to animate all of the fingers, and then also spread them out with some control that way. Using the IK bone that controls the entire wing, you can also rotate that, and that'll also, oops, looks like he's got a twist or something. We have to look at that. Something's going on with his finger. Might be because of the, I've got rotation on these. We'll take a look at it. Let me reset this real quick, and I'll show you what that's supposed to do. I'd have to zoom in. So it should curl that finger bone using just this one control. The problem is, looks like when you use the IK, because the bones, when you're stretching the wing up like this, because the bones, yeah, see how the finger twists? It's causing the bone to twist, so I may have to make a different control for that. We'll figure that out in a sec. I can easily make it something that's paired and using these same controls that I have on the feet if I want. And one other thing I added, well, a couple of other things. I've got this look that controls the orientation of the head. So he sort of follows that, which you could use if you were going to have him sort of trace a bug. And then I've created these, the ears, so that they have these kind of control surface Bats will tend to like wiggle their ears around. So I've got this one bone you can move, and then you can tweak these if you want to kind of sculpt the ear, like he's using that for his sonar. And then I've cleaned up the jaw and the tongue so that the teeth don't distort. What else was there? I think that's it. And I'll show you how to, it's a lot of bones right now, I'll show you how to clean it up when I'm going and resetting or redoing this arm rig and figuring out this finger. I've also gone and painted the texture for the fur to give him a more realistic look. And I did figure out in the previous video, I talked about how this wing was a single-sided object, and I figured out a workaround because we've got this subsurface scattering going on, and that'll only work. The shader will only work on a kind of a hold object or something that has a volume. So what you can do, if you select that wing and look at its controls, you can put, after the armature, you can put a Solidify modifier and make it really thin. In fact, I'm going to make it, well, we'll play around with the thickness here, but it's got a really thin kind of extrusion to it, and that makes it hold object so that when you render subsurface, you actually get translucency of the light coming through the wings as it should, so it gives it a more realistic look. And I'll talk about that a little bit. So let's just play with that. If we change this to make it even thinner, you have to check out the previous video it gets a little more translucent. And that's based on the material, the subsurface scattering that I talked about in the previous video. So let me look at the thickness. Yeah, it's pretty good. When I did that, I needed to turn off this. I got to go in edit mode to show. I needed to mark the edges of the wing as just by selecting them, double clicking, and you have to go around the entire edge. But I had to mark those as sharp in order for it to not render kind of a weird normal on the edge. When I created that thickness, it without the sharpness, it ends up having kind of a bevel to it. You could probably play around with the edge weights as well if you wanted, but I found that worked pretty well. So there's a lot to cover in this video. Let's get to it. First we'll go select this. I want to show you how to do the IK rig. So just to reiterate, we have right now, I've done one side, it's got the IK, and the other is just set up with what was in the previous video, which is that basically it's inverted copy rotation with the orientation inverted so that it creates kind of an elbow bend, and it allows you to also make modifications that way. But it's, I was able to create a pretty good wing flap with 8 keyframes and on both of these bones in the previous video, and it worked okay. But I think I can do better with the, bats don't just fly, they also crawl. And for things like that, this IK control is probably a better way to go. So all we need to do to fix this is remove this copy rotation on the elbow. So now when you rotate this, the whole thing will go. And we want to make a control bone, and we want to have an elbow pointer that trails back here. Okay, so what we can do is if we want, we can just flip these, but just to show you how to do it from scratch, since you may not have one, just grab the end of this elbow, and then Control E. Oops, we got to go into edit mode. Select that endpoint, Control E, and extrude a bone off the front. So when you do this kind of manipulation on it, it's going to get all kinds of weird rotation to it. Okay, what you want to do to fix that, so that everything will orient correctly if you are doing constraints for rotation and things, is select the entire bone. The first thing we need to do is go to the bone itself. Call this, let's see, what do we call it on the other? Wing control. This is on the left side, so we're going to make it .L. Let me turn on my screencast keys. All right. So that's wing control.L. We need to turn off connected, so that it's not a child of, or not connected to this elbow. And then we also want to turn off deform, because we don't want it to have any deformation in terms of being able to make the model itself, the vertices move. Now what we want to do, let's turn on X-ray so we can see all of the bones. Sort of, nope. Let's take the armature. If you have trouble seeing your bones through your model, oh wait, sorry. If we go into this mode and turn on X-ray, then we can see all of the bones. By this mode, I mean the non-shaded viewport shading mode. So let's select our control bone and then just select one of the spine bones. Second, holding down shift, and if you go to armature and bone roll and then recalculate roll to the active bone, you'll notice this bone sort of flips and is oriented now straight on, and that's what you want. I'm also going to look at it from the side, so I can sort of line it up to what I think is the, that'd be the control bone on the opposite side. Just select this and see. Yep. So you can see that it's roughly the same orientation. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now the other thing you want to do is control. Let's go to the top and do this. You want to control D. Whoops. I may have accidentally hit control E. Select the control bone. Control D to duplicate it. And I'm going to just, actually let's just rotate it. You can see when I rotate it that it goes kind of weird in terms of rotating around. I mainly want to get it lined up to this. This is going to be our elbow pointer. And I just want to get it to the same size. These don't have to be perfect because they're not really, they're more of a positional thing. The orientation or the rotation doesn't really matter. So just get them in the same general vicinity like that. Now you'll notice there's these dotted lines coming from both of these. They need to be a child of this root bone, because if you leave these control bones in the hierarchy of the arm itself, when you go to do the IK, it's going to cause all kinds of feedback loops that are going to make it rotate. So they need to just sort of move with the bat, but be independent of the arm that they're controlling. So let's take that and then select our spine, do our bone roll, recalculate just to get it flat. And we'll move both of these. Notice right now it's a parent of the forearm. Just click on that, and I called the root bone. You can just hit R if you have a root bone. If you don't, add one. I'll show you how. There it is. Now you'll see a line going from that bone to the root, and this one too. And that puts them in the so that they move with the bat, but they can now control the bones in the arm. So if you need to add a root bone, and you'll see where I've added it, I've gone and put it where the bone in the spine basically inverts, so that when I rotate this, the go to pose mode, if I rotate that, the whole bat will rotate with the rig as well. And then if I get that rotation going, I can come back and shift the bones independent of the root bone in order to get it controlled, to get the bat posed. All right, so and all you have to do to make a if you go back to edit, all you have to do to make a root bone is just while you're in edit for the armature, add a single bone, position that bone wherever you want, and parent whatever the top of the skeleton that you've already created to that root so that it becomes a child. So then your root is the parent of the entire rig. And in this case, spine 1 is the parent of all the other. Spine 1 and lower spine are both children of root now. So let's make the IK for the arm. So the way this works is you need to put the IK on the top, the bone that's going to be controlled, right up to the control bone. So right there. So if we select that bone and do add bone constraint, do an inverse kinematics, and then you're going to target the armature, and you want to target our control. In this case, it's called wing control.l. Go back. So wing control.l. I also need to name this bone, I noticed, similar to this one. So let's just go and copy wing arm pointer and put it on this, make it .l. So we have the same naming convention. So now we have our IK targeting the control bone, and it needs to also aim at this pointer target, pole target, which was also, it's an armature and wing arm pointer.l. Now notice that rotated the entire rig, and that's because right now there's no chain length on this IK. IK is basically a chain, and it's running, because it's set to 0, it's doing the entire model all the way down to the root. So if we just set that to 2 bones, which means it's doing this bone and then the shoulder bone, or the forearm bone, so the chain just goes between those two. It should, and you can tell that our bone here, the reason that the wing's tilted is because the bone itself is down, or aimed down. Let's go to edit, and it's just aiming at it. So if we just move that up, you kind of want these to be in similar positions, at least when you're first setting up the rig. Go back to pose mode. Now our trim on the wings is the same. So it's aiming at the right spot. And if you just grab this, now we have our IK on our rig, on the arm. Okay. So, and then if you need to aim the wing, their elbow kind of back or up, just move that up and down to do so. Now let's think about how to fix this finger bone. See, if you look at it, it works like this. Right there. But obviously, because I'm using the same bone, it's not that's going to become rotated when we're using it to position things. So we may want to duplicate. Yeah. So what we'll do is we're going to duplicate this bone and call it finger control. And then we'll move it up off the wing so it's just a little bit, so we can actually target it a little bit better and know which is which. So what we'll do, go to edits, and we will take this bone, let's go to the front, and then we can Control D and just move it up. I'm going to line it up a little bit too. And then we'll just move it off the front. So now it's still a child of the root. And we want to give it a new name because it's probably gotten something else. So we'll call this finger control instead of wing control. .r. Take off the 0.01. And we're just going to mirror that then, so that it'll mirror across to the other side. So all you have to do that is select the bone, armature, and as long as it's got the .r on it, if you have that bone selected, when you do symmetrize, it flips it and puts a bone on the other side with the same name but .l. Okay, so now if we go back with those bones selected to pose mode, these finger bones have a control, so they have a copy rotation and they're looking at the wing control. In this case, we just want to change that to finger control.r. So they have the finger control.r. This particular one, the bottommost one, we want to have all of the orientations on for control because it can sort of move in and out. It may not be able to, but we're going to want to be able to point it forward. So we're going to leave those, and you want to make it sure that it's set to local. So then now when this rotates, we can move that way or this way. And then these can stay the same because basically they're just copying the bone, the orientation of this bone, which magnifies the result. And they're only and it's only going on the X. You may not even need the Y, which would be the rotation. So if we turn that off. So, yeah. Now, Actually, we may, let me think. We may want to make this control a child of this one, of the control bone, because if we move the control bone up, notice you can take it pretty far away from the wing. Looks like the finger stays oriented the way it should now. And if we rotate this, then it does the proper orientation. Yeah, that works. So what we really want to do is just track this to this bone so that the control moves with the joint so we can keep it in place. So what we'll do, and we could do that a couple of different ways. We could make it a child of this control and then just have it not copy its rotation, which is probably the simplest way. So let's do that. Just make it position. So both of these, if we go into edit mode, let's do these out and move them down and just a little bit off the front. As long as they're in the general vicinity, we shouldn't lose them then. And then go to its bone properties. And then instead of root, we're going to make it child of wing control.r. So wing control.r. Now the trick is it'll be connected. It's a child of it. Doesn't need to be connected. In other words, it doesn't need to be like right off the end of it, but we don't want it to inherit rotation. Okay, same thing here. Wing control.l. Now it's a child of that. And turn off inherit rotation. And what that'll do is go to pose. Now when we grab this, and let's say let's move it up to here. This bone doesn't rotate with this one like that, and the finger stays aligned. And all we have to do to grab the finger is, or to rotate the finger is just orient it. And the other thing is if we're not careful and we just do that, yeah, it'll rotate, but it doesn't kind of lose control. We can always fix it back. So it should work for that. Let's do the same rig setup on these finger bones. So this one will be copy its rotation from this. So add a constraint, copy rotation, armature, and it's going to be wing, where's it, finger, control.l. Make it local, and yeah, it takes all of the rotations. So now when you rotate this, yep, that works. And then these just copy rotation from that finger, which is armature, and it's called thumb1.l. And make it local. And again, it only needs the X. You don't need the Y and the Z. Otherwise you get some weird broken fingers. And then from here we can just select this one and copy, go under pose, copy constraints to selected bones. And instead of thumb1.l, it'll be thumb2, which is this bone. So now when we rotate this, yep, we get our hook. That's good. Let's see what else we need. I'll show you how to do the feet. All I did for these ears was the same thing. Copy rotations to this bone, but they have some influence control, so they're not 100% controlled. It fades over time. So let's do this. So you've got these two controls right here. Let's just zoom in on that and I'll show you how that works. So I've gone and created two controls, left and a right, or in this case, foot control 1 and foot control 2. And then these bones that are their actual finger bones are copy rotation, local space, and they copy in all directions. And then this bone will just, like the wing finger, will copy the rotation of the bone next to it. And it does that all the way up the chain. So all of these bones copy the rotation of the bones ahead of them in the chain. And then all of these bones, these, have influences that vary, so between these two. So this one, because it's the last one on the edge, is only influenced by this bone, whereas this bone has two copy rotations. One of them, and the other thing is I'm setting the mix for these influences to after original instead of replace, so that they mix better, they mix appropriately, so that this bone is 75% controlled by this bone and 25% controlled by this bone. This bone is 50-50. This bone is 75% controlled by this bone and 25% by this one, and then this one is only controlled by this bone. So that when you get this fanning movement when you spread them out. And then if you rotate them, they fan between the two. So you can make him grasp just using these two bones. So let's just set those back. What we want to do to make that, to mirror it, is just copy those control bones. Let's go to edit mode. Since they both have a .r for their names, I'm going to just mirror them across. So go to Armature. Again, I'm in edit mode here. Armature. And in this case, I want to do symmetrize. So now I have foot control 1.l and then foot control 2.l. And I could go and manually apply all of these. Let's go back to edit pose mode again. Manually apply all of these constraints. But since I've already explained them here, I'm just going to copy them across and change the last letter of the target. So we'll select this bone, and then just go to pose, copy constraints to selected bones. So that copies it over, but it's now targeting this bone. So So instead of .l, we just make it .l or .r .l for this one. Hit enter. So now it targets that. And then this one we can copy or select this bone, and then this one, pose, copy constraints to selected, and again it's targeting the wrong side. To just change that to .l. Lowercase. There we go. Now, I could, there's a couple of ways to copy them over, and even this is kind of cumbersome, but this is really just the easiest way to make sure I don't have to do all of this tweaking of the influences and setting all of these pull downs with after original and stuff. So select that one and that one. Oops. Copy constraints to selected. We'll come back and edit the names in a second. Metal one. Copy constraints to selected. Oops. This is where you have to be careful because trying to get it from this side. There we go. So you only need those two. You don't want to copy the wrong constraint. Copy constraints to selected. Get it? Yep. All right. Same thing. Oops. All right, so then if we go and change all of these to .l. If I hadn't already mirrored these, skinned it and assigned weights, then I could just go and do a symmetrize to get the constraints to copy as well. But because I've already applied all of the weights, this is the only way to get it to do it easily. So that one's right. .l, .l, .l. That one's right. Then this. And obviously, if I hadn't gone and named everything and done a symmetrize when I first made these deformed bones, this would not work. Just changing the .l. So that's why you want to name your bones as you go. All right, so now let's just do a F to focus on that, and something's not working. Interesting. So you can see how they're not fanning between these are, but something is not the same. It may be targeting the wrong bone. Foot control 2.l. It may be that the double constraints. See, yeah, the ones that have two constraints, obviously I need to change both of them to .l, so I only did the one. I didn't do the L. Now do the bottoms. And one more. So yeah, hat fans out, and so then the cool thing is as we can hide these other bones now, so we have less to control. So one of the things I've been doing as I go through this, let's go to edit mode. I have in the armature, I've got all these layers turned on right now. In the second layer, I've hidden these bones that I may want to be able to tweak independent, but that are also controlled by guide bones, which are in the first layer. So in this first layer, I'm just putting the bones that are for animation. So I've hidden the arm bones. I can hide these ear bones. I'll probably put these ear bones in the second layer, since you may want to tweak those as well. Same with the tongue. It's just a way of cleaning up your layers. So, and then in the third layer, I have bones that I just really don't need to touch. Why? So yeah, these don't. Those need to be in a different layer. So if we go back to, we're in edit. On the bone, this is where you assign them. It's just, this is the layer that it's in, so we want to put that in the first layer. This should be in the first layer. First, and yeah, bones that you just don't need to touch. Again, this one, yeah, these two, it's hard to tell which one's those. Those are the lead bones, so they're in the wrong too. So if we go back to, yeah, this is 3. So let's just go put everything back in 1, so we can then organize. Right now they're all over. I'm going to leave the finger bones in, because this is in 3, which is what's visible right now, the one that's turned on. Because 3 is the one that I know. I want to put bones that I'm just not going, that are basically controlled in, which would be then these bones right here. Those are controlled since they're 100% oriented by this bone. So we'll put those in 3. And these arms, which are IK, we know are also 100% controlled. Put those in layer 3. Here's the leading finger. It's also all right. these are secondary that we're going to want to control. So we could theoretically, if we wanted to, move these secondary bones into 3-2, but I do find you're going to want these sort of visible. This one doesn't, is controlled by this, so we can put that in 3. And then all of our finger bones, even on the feet, are also in 3. This may seem like a lot of work to make this happen. It's really not, and it makes animation a lot easier. So it's worth setting up all of these constraints because they're not that big of a deal to have. Because when you go to try to animate this, if you were animating each one of these bones with keys, it would be a lot of work to get a good animation, because once you've keyed a bone and then you set another key, you've got to worry about all the in-betweens, the tweaks, things like that. So we do want this for control. We don't need, these are intermittent, they just control the stretch here, so we can hide those in 3. And like I said, these we might put in 2. Which is our secondary controls. So 3 is just bones that aren't controlled, or that are controlled by other bones. And then 2 is secondary controls. We can put the tongue in secondary controls. These 2 perhaps. Just to help clean it up. And oh yeah, because this is targeted to this, we don't, in the neck as well, we don't have any control over that. Or, well, we could tweak it, but we'll put that in at least secondary controls, just to clean it up. And then all the spines, we'll leave, looks like that's it. Yep. And there's your control, there's your animation bones. All right, so let's go to the armature. We're looking at the control. This is our animation control. Here's our secondary control. Oh, I accidentally put that one in. 2. So there's our secondary control. Actually, the head goes in 3 since it can't be. Yeah, let's make it just to keep it simple. Yep. And then 3 is just what's off. Okay. Yep, looks good. All right, so now if we go back to here, this is our animation mode. If you want to animate easier when we go into this, you can't really see all of the bones when you're in full shading mode. You can select this armature, go to your object properties, and down in the viewport display, just do in front. And then with this cleaned up mode, you have, it's a little easier to see what you're doing. Like I said, these, they can get a little bit knobby. Maybe we put those into secondary controls as well. Just trying to think, because it's so big. But I don't want to have to be toggling between layers all the time to in order to get this thing to animate or cleaned up. Let's save this. Let's take a look at kind of a wing flap. So we'll select both of these arm controls and just pull them up. Oops, that was in edit mode, not pose mode. Clear transforms. Select both of those. What I'm thinking is, just for ease of animation and size, since the main bones we're going to be animating here are these, both of these wing controls. I'm going to make those bigger. And then I'm going to move these finger controls to the inside. So that I don't make any mistakes in terms of grabbing them. And maybe down on the finger controls. That way I can just grab these a lot easier because they're the main wing control. Alright, let's try that. So if we grab both of those, W, and just move them up, everything moves well. And then we'll just pull them in. So that'd be like our first keyframe for those. Let's move his head down a little bit. And maybe drag his legs. So as I said in the last video, when these are up, when the wings are up, his legs will probably get dragged up with them. Oh, the other thing, right now, both of the elbows stayed back here. So that'll help you with the wing trim, moving those up. They may need, I don't know if they can track the, but you need to put the, flex the wings in a little bit. Use the wing pointer to do that. It's better. Both of these are like a little high, and that's why the wings are sort of popped. You want to avoid that pop if you can. So that'd be our first keyframe. And we really only need to keyframe these controls, so let's do that. So selecting that, we're keying the position, not the orientation. So we'll key both of those. And I think we also keyed this position. These were orientation. And then these were position. We're going to probably want to key this root bone for position and orientation as well, I'm guessing. And then I also keyed this for, we'll play with that. And remember, the way this is rigged with the tail is if we rotate this, then it takes this flap and trims it a little bit. You can even scale it. So I'll rotate that a little bit. So there's the first keys. Then if we go to, so from the extension, as I explained in the last video, when his arms are extended out like this, that means he's about to flap down. Pull down this way, because he's catching the air. So we will probably go extend out. Let me see, 20 frames, so 10 frames. Then we'll extend these, pull them down. So I'm just pulling them down this way right now. It's going to make them flap out. And then pulling this out so it's extended. And then pull this down. So it's sort of pose to pose here. So he's flapping, catching the air. Like I said, these will trim it. We'll trim it at the end. Right now I want them to be kind of trailing behind. And then the same with the legs. Oops. Go down. Halfway. So he's flapping. Let's get these both down. Yep. So we'll key that. Just one at a time. And these. And the legs. Let's make sure that I get this one, yep, and this one. So you can see where you may have to do some cleanup because of the way the transition happens in the the IK, it's doing a straight line. See how it's going straight from point to point? And that's going to cause the arms to bend like that. What you can do to fix that is just mess with the path that it takes. So right now, that would be the Z path would have a curve to it. And we'll show you how to do that in a second, but I'm going to keep it that way for now. So then we'll bring it down. Both of these. And then bring them in. And we can do the trim. These will go down halfway, pull them inside, not too far inside. And then the legs can trail down and in. Tail. Just trying to make it curved better. We'll do the shoulders down a little bit as well. We'll have to add those keys in a minute. These, probably, they're too extended, so we just want that little bit of bend so they're not going to pop. That'll work. So we'll key. And tail. Set it here to see where that brings the arms in. And that's again with the Z curve. That right there. Fix that. And then when he brings this up, it's going to be halfway in this time, and this is where it's actually going to, these will stay in. So let's pull them out a little bit. So you want to bring them halfway. Gotta see how it's messing with his, there we go, the fold, but that's partly because of these trims, which need to oh yeah, it's the extras. So let's just get this just a little out. There we go. Get his elbow. There we go. Just trying to get the pose. That's right. We can trim this up in a minute, but this will go up and be a little in. Okay. So yeah, he's bringing his arms in really tight. Maybe they're a little further out. Let's see. All right, let's key that. Then the elbow pointers. So I got everything. I think so. Let's see. Then I think if I copy this keyframe for everything, select them all. Copy. Yep. I think the tail needs it too. Yeah. Key that. And here. Let's see what that looks like. Timing's going to be a little weird, and like I said, the S curves are going to be off. There's a duplication of a frame there. It's not bad, actually. Let's see if we can get the up and down going. Actually, let's make it beat faster. So it's going to take him a little bit less time. Let's get all of the bones selected that we're messing with. Actually, let's just do them all. So if we select tail, we'll fix that in a minute. Just going to flap. To 32. Let's just see what that looks like. Play. Just to make sure we get the full speed. It's pretty good. Shoulders could use some work. They're not moving, but we can add that in once we get the timing right. So let's make them go up and down. So just trying to get the keys. So now we're at, so as he's flapping down, he'll go up. So let's key this. And then here, that'll be his height. And then glide down. Just copy this one. So you may make his head bob in the opposite direction as he's, so we have the key here and then here. Since he's flown up, this will go down. And then here, I'll just copy this one again. So now he's watching what he's flying after. And the whole thing could probably be it's looking pretty good. The whole thing could probably be a little faster since they fly really fast. But all we have to do that is select our keyed bones. Select all of our keys and then hit R to scale them. And they're going to scale from the point that we're at. So if we want to make it happen, (16 frames). It's looking good. Turn off the armature. So you could add, we could create a loop of that, have his head turning. From that, we can then create lots of potential, like we could make this into a flock of bats or a swarm, however we want. Find a good pose. So hopefully you found this useful. This will be the end of this tutorial, at least, unless I come up with something else to show related to the bat. But hopefully you find it useful. If you have any questions, just put them in the comments. I'm also going to include the time lapse of me painting the fur, which not that much, but and then cleaning up the weights for the mouth. So if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments.